We're back, and everything seems to be working today. Let's wrap the week up with a United Happy Hour.
Hello and welcome back to United Happy Hour. I hope you didn't miss us too much on Tuesday. I'm sure you didn't. I hope everyone is feeling feeling fine. I'm sure you are. I know we are. And Pauly, you weren't able to make it on Tuesday due to some incredible sandstorms. You wish you don't live in Nevada.
A little bit lighter and fluffier.
yeah, you don't live in Nevada, mate. You live in New York, but. I hope you find out after your weather issues on Tuesday. We had some bad snow here on Tuesday as well, so it must be, you're a long way away, mate, but we got very common weather.
The weather might have cleared up the Wi-Fi because for the first time in like 4 shows, we were able to get started right on time. It's not going crazy for me. If you missed Tuesday's show because we didn't have one and you want to know what we would have said, I would recommend going back and listening to the show after the 0-0 draw versus Manchester City or after the 0-0 draw against Liverpool, because I guarantee you it would have been the exact same thing.
Yeah, that Arsenal game that weekend very much mirrored the games that you said in the past with Manchester City and Chelsea at home. Pauly, I think people will think to themselves, maybe it's the way forward having no happy hour on the Tuesday, because United played on the Wednesday and look what they did.
They played on the Tuesday.
Tuesday. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting my days all mixed up here. We played on the Tuesday, Pauly, and it was an absolutely incredible result. 9-0. A lot of people will say, well, it was become a bit of a training ground match because of the fact they were down to 10 men. But before I ask you about the game, Pauly, what I will just say is that I don't read too much into the red card, Pauly, because I'll be honest with you, when the media and opposing fans like to analyse the Tottenham 6-1 against us earlier in the season, I don't hear a lot of people including the fact that Martial was sent off early in that game and the fact that changed the game. So I'm not going to, read too much into red card. I still think United had a lot to do, and beating a team 9-0 is still an achievement, whether it's 11 men or 10, in my opinion.
I'm that guy. I'm that person. I am that person who will tell you, hey, great win, but it was a training ground exercise. That's not to completely disparage everything. There's a lot that you could take away from this, but it was a match where you faced 10 men for 88 minutes plus stoppage time. That red card was unfortunate, but it was exactly, it was 100% deserving.
Yeah.
You say, I don't hear people talking about Martial's red card in the Spurs match. The Spurs match is like in terms of aberration, it is the biggest of aberrations out there. I believe United have conceded 3 goals in a league game in the last 2 years twice.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I believe it's twice, one of which was the Spurs match. There's so many things, no preseason, Pogba having COVID, a lot that you could throw out, but it depends on what side you're listening to and who wants to make their point. The national media will always conveniently forget that Martial was sent off and United played 60 minutes with 10 men.
And that's the point that I was making. I was making the more that the media will not refer to it because it's us. That's why I don't think I'm happy to. No, I mean, don't get me wrong, Paulie. I know that game isn't 9-0 if it's 11v11. Don't get me wrong. But I still think 9-0 against 10 men is quite an achievement, especially when, you'll probably look into it more, but this United team just don't really do that to teams these days, do they?
Yeah, we'll get to that. And there's nothing to disparage 9-0. That, all right, like if 9-0 was easy, more than 3 teams would have done it. And teams have played with 10 men for 80 plus minutes. not a lot, but more than a few times in Premier League history, and 9-0 still doesn't happen to them. So credit to United. But when you look at it, and there's a lot of things that happened to begin with. I think Hasenhüttl was caught between a rock and a hard place. Southampton, as soon as this happened, people killed Hasenhüttl for this, but as soon as this happened, he went into a shell. Southampton are a high press, high intensity team, and as soon as this happened, they went 4-4-1 and didn't press United. They literally sat and dropped into a deep block because you can't play.
You could hear the manager on the sideline when our defenders had the ball telling their strikers not to press the ball.
Exactly. And
drop back into shape, because they're just naturally programmed to press. That's how Southampton play, like you say, isn't it?
And they didn't have a plan B. Like, they were very organized. Their players knew exactly what to do in this 4-4-1. They were very organized. They're just not designed to do that. That's not the player's skill set to play a way that you would to play to absorb pressure. So eventually you're going to break, because even if the players all know what to do and they've trained, this isn't what, you don't play when you play Theo Walcott at center forward, you don't boom crosses to his head. That's just not what you do. It's not his game. And to Hasenhüttl, look, it's hard to have a plan B when you lose a man in the first 90 seconds of the match, because you specifically named a starting 11 to play a certain way. And now you have to change that, but it's not so much the way that your squad is built. Now, maybe you could play 30, 45, 60 minutes like this. 90? That's a big ask. And I guarantee you, if you would have told Ralph Hasenhüttl, one of your players, you don't have to tell him which one, but one of your players will be sent off in the first 90 seconds, he would have named a different 11 to be like, well, whichever one it is, the other 10 guys will be able to adapt better than that. So rocking a hard place for him. Having said that, United took care of business, and they did exactly what they had to do. They played it. It took them a while. Southampton were good. They got their breakthrough. Then they got their second goal, which was from a pattern that we have seen them working on in several games now. They just hadn't gotten the ball into the net off of it, but this time it went through. Then an own goal. And then that's when the sails kind of came out of Southampton a bit. And then they responded at halftime, and they responded pretty well. And they were very good in the second half until they went down to 9 men. And then when they went down to 9 men, United just went boom, 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 and plucked the doors off them.
Massive turning point. I just want to say, some people saying hello to us here, Paulie. Shout out to Hannah here. Hannah's my best friend's sister, so I better say hello to her. Anna does some brilliant work with crafts as well. I think she's on Etsy, so if you want to check out any of her work, feel free to do that. Mila's Moments is what it's called. I've got a comment
Hannah,
here.
Next time we give you an advertisement, you got to pay for it.
Just a shameless plug there, yeah. Look, Aravind here, Paulie, just said about, was that why both Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Shaw were so advanced the whole match because there was little danger of transition? I think the big giveaway for United not being worried about the transition was at half-time, Paulie, when they were happy to move Fred out to left-back, obviously. I'm not saying that Fred can't do that job, but I mean, you're a stat man, mate, but I'm hard to push to remember Fred ever playing left back before. So I think that tells you that Solskjaer wasn't worried about transition.
I could tell you exactly when the last time Fred played left back was.
Go on.
Southampton at home.
There you go.
Southampton at home. After Brandon Williams got hurt, Fred moved over to left back, and we finished the game with like a midfield three of McTominay, Rashford, and was it Dan James? It might have been Dan James. Yeah, I would say that it was that they were advanced the whole match because there was little danger of transition. I would also say that was probably the plan. Like, we have seen Luke Shaw park himself that far up the pitch plenty of times. This was another game where Wan-Bissaka was very far forward and it was one of those where, hey, once again, Wan-Bissaka doing a lot in the final third because United didn't ask him to do any of the ball progression. So it was one of those, you get it from your own third, and then the middle third will do everything else for you. You just get forward. You get forward, and the ball will come to you in the final third, which is very much how he played against Newcastle, which was another game where everybody was praising his ability to get forward. I don't have the chart available here, but I have that funky little Wan-Bissaka's heat map where it's like he's really good in the final third. He's not so good in the middle third. He's better than you think in the final third. And that was this match. You didn't have to worry about transition. Southampton weren't coming at you. I mean, the center backs were parked in the middle of the the center backs were basically parked outside the box. I actually, in the second half, I thought our best midfielder was Harry Maguire. I thought he was the one that was pulling the strings the most. But I want to just get back to the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
Like 9-0, great. It's hard to take anything out of this game.
This is what I was going to ask you, Paulie, because we've had a comment that's similar to that about, I just loved how patient and ruthless kept going for more goals, for goal difference looks healthy. The goal difference looks healthy now, and confidence is back, something we really needed. And I was going to follow that up, Paulie, by asking the question, do you think this is a turning point for United now? The fact that they've gone and scored 9 goals against the Southampton team, albeit with 10 men, do you think the let's look further than the 9 goals and the very fact that they were looking to score more, Paulie? Do you read anything into that? Can you see them doing that again if they get the opportunity? Is that going to be inbred in them now? Because I think that's what you need to be if you're going to be champions, Paulie. Because I was thinking, what if this was Manchester City? At halftime, we're thinking, what if this was Manchester City? What if this was Liverpool? They keep going, won't they, Paulie? And that's what I wanted to see United do. Yeah, and that's I don't know who the commentators were in the UK, but we know that the players spoke after the game, so we know Maguire, Solskjaer in the dressing room were very much saying, no, go for it. And I thought Solskjaer put his money where his mouth was. Perfect opportunity to get Bruno Fernandes off the pitch and get him 45 minutes of rest. And he left him out there because he was telling his team, no, you go for this. And you did get your goal difference back looking much more healthy, which is a good thing. Everything else our commentator was Jim Beglin, the former Liverpool defender, who has commentated on way too many United matches recently, but who was astonishingly very pro-United on Tuesday. It was weird. He's full of praise for them, but as he said, 4-0. And he said, you got to go into halftime. This is still the first half. He said, you have to go into halftime and you have to say, double it. It's not enough to, and he said, it's not enough to go and win this game 6-0. The other commentator said, how many times do we see a team go up 4-0 and the game ends, 4-0 at halftime and the game ends at 4-0. And you could see out the match and you could have done that. And Jim Beglin was like, it's not enough to go and win this game 6-0. He said, you got 45 minutes to score 4 goals. So you have another 45 minutes. You need to score at least 4 more. That's what it was. And credit to United, they did that. To be fair as well, Paulie, we did kind of see it against Leeds as well. I mean, that was slightly different. I mean, Leeds, obviously, the way Leeds play, that lends it to keep going and scoring more goals. But they were 4-1 up at half-time. They did go and get another couple of goals in the second half. So there has been a couple of instances this season where United have done that. And also, I will say, there's also been other games where they haven't done it. And to be fair to Solskjaer, Paulie, in his post-match press conference, he's always quick to say, we should have scored more. We should have made it. Even when we've won games by the odd goal, he's disappointed at the end because he said we should have made that more comfortable for ourselves. That should have been 3-4. I think he said it after the Everton in the League Cup game, obviously, when we only just got through late on. But if you remember, we had a heap load of chances in the first half an hour, didn't we, Paulie? I think, to be fair to Solskjaer, I think it is something that he's been trying to instill in these players. But it is difficult, Paulie, because a lot of these players have been programmed now for a long time under managers that don't necessarily want to score 4, 5, 6 in a game. And it does take a while to get that into a player. Yeah, they used to play for managers who were happy to just see it out. And so you're right. Solskjaer has beaten this into his team. But you asked, is this a turning point? And I can't tell you if it is. Yeah, we need because we had a situation earlier this year. We were 1-0 up against Leipzig, and we easily could have went and seen that game out and won that game 1-0. Leipzig were never going to score, and instead Solskjaer brought on Bruno Fernandes. He brought on Marcus Rashford, and we went and we scored 5. And he talked about how important that was. Yeah.
What happened next? 3 days later, we laid an egg and we lost 1-0 to Arsenal. 3 days after that, we went to Istanbul and lost 2-1. All right.
Yeah.
And then you bring up Leeds. So we did the same thing against Leeds and we didn't stop. We were relentless. Dan James getting a goal at the end of that game, just like he got a goal at the end of this game. What happened after that? You brought up the next one. Everton. We didn't put them away early. We had chances early. We didn't put them away. It took us until the 87th minute to get a breakthrough, which meant Rashford and Martial had to come on. Bruno Fernandes had to play 90 minutes. And then what we do the game after that? We went to Leicester and we dropped points in because of 2 extremely preventable goals. Yeah. And that, not to mention, we missed some great chances, notably Marcus Rashford, like 45 seconds into the match. So we have had these false dawns before. So I would love for this to be a catalyst and a turning point, but we can't sit here and tell you that until April or May when we're looking back at it.
I was asked the same question on Red Devils Talk last night, whether this was a turning point. I had to smile when you sent the running order through today because I thought, well, I've already sort of answered this question once this week. And I said it's pretty much same as you, Paulie. We won't know until we're in this situation again. Now, I don't think United will be in a situation again where they'll find themselves playing 10 men for 88 minutes. That's very unlikely.
And that's why we have to keep it in check here. Like, I think this is me staying true to form here in that everybody always talks about in the Solskjaer, the highs are really high, the lows are really low. And when we do get those lows, we sit here and we talk about, well, in the big picture, and we don't get too low, but it's also don't get too high here because I don't know. So, that was a great win, but it's more about, every time we have these losses and we say, well, just stay with it and things are going to turn around because the team is playing pretty well. Right now it's, okay, you need to turn this, what they did yesterday, into consistency. It was great to get Anthony Martial on the pitch and scoring 2 goals. But every time he has scored this year, we sit here and we've been saying all year, he just needs one to get going. And then he'll come on and score a brilliant goal. And then he hasn't gotten going. So we need to turn this into consistency. I'm very happy we won 9-0. But again, we didn't win 9-0 against 11 players.
Yeah, look, Paulie, it's like I said, it's inconceivable that we could find ourselves against 10 men for 88 minutes, like against Everton at the weekend. Of course it is. But what isn't inconceivable is that we could find ourselves something like 2-0 up after 20 minutes or 2-0 up after half an hour. That's when, again, you want to see them then, instead of thinking, right, 2-0, let's hold what we have. Go for it, Paulie. Go for the gauntlet. Go for the throw. Go for the juggle, whatever you want to say, and get a win and do it convincingly, because goal difference could become important as well at the end of the season. We've seen it at the end of other seasons. I think goal difference could have quite easily, well, it did play a part in us finishing 3rd last season. It could have played a part in us finishing 4th at one stage. We've seen the goal difference settle a league title, unfortunately, for us. So you need to take the goals when they're there on offer.
It's interesting that you bring that up, and 10 minutes ago when you brought up how Ollie wants this team to be more ruthless, because I do remember, I wrote about this at the time and people killed me for it. I do remember against Brighton, Project Restart last year, we went up 3-0 or 3-1, I forget which one, and then, get everybody off. So Bruno came off and Pogba came off, and I believe Rashford and Martial might have even came off. McTominay's on, Fred's on, and half the team looked like they were still pushing on for a goal. But McTominay and Fred were sitting there just passing sideways and going back. And it was like, what are you doing? Like, you have an opportunity. And at the time, it was like Leicester might be within catching range. Leicester were still pretty far ahead of us. But it was, if we can claw back at this goal difference, we only have to be, if we're only 2 goals behind them heading into the final day of the season, and if we're 3 points and 2 goals behind them, a 2-0 win, overtake, or a 1-0 win would put us even. A 2-0 win puts us above them. And we've got guys passing sideways. And people were like, well, they're just seeing out a game. Like, why are you so mad? Like, they won 3-0. And it's, well, that's the thing is, if you want to be ruthless, you have to do that every game. And to make matters worse, like in that game, Wan-Bissaka was still bombing all the way up the pitch. And it was like, well, if you don't want to attack, then tell your right back to save his energy and stop pushing himself up and down the pitch because he's just, he ended up tired at the end of the season. So I think it's one or the other I think that's Solskjaer might be telling his team that, but this time he actually backed it up with his substitutions as opposed to previously it was, well, I put on guys that are going to see out this win. And then I'm talking about, well, we got to keep scoring. You say one thing and you do another. This was consistent. I brought on Donny van de Beek, who they tell me played 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I moved Fred to left back because I didn't even want to waste a sub to change out my left back. I wanted a more attacking central midfielder. And I made a like-for-like substitution for a striker who I just want to get going. I left Bruno Fernandes in there because I want to get him going. And then, all right, I took off Marcus Rashford after 60 minutes to get him rest. That could have happened at halftime too.
Paulie, before we move on to what's on social media, I just want to sort of interact with this comment because I had similar feelings to you before the game, although I didn't tweet anything and I didn't put it in the group chat. But out of interest, Paulie, saw your tweet before the game and not knowing how to feel with the starting lineup. Who would you have played in the double pivot and who would you start on Saturday versus Everton? Now, I've got to be honest with you, Paulie, when I saw that starting lineup, there was a lot that I didn't like about it. I think I did put something in the group chat, actually. I didn't like it. And I liked it even less after 2 minutes when I knew what the crack of the game was going to be and I knew exactly what Southampton were going to do, like any team would with 10 men. But just first of all, Paulie, what was it about the team that for me, it was the McTominay and Fred double pivot in a home game against Southampton, a game that we needed to go and attack and win. But I don't know what your issue with the team was. Do you just want to sort of say, or?
Yeah, I worried about that. And I figured, is it putting Paul Pogba on the bench because we're resting him? Or is it putting Paul Pogba on the bench because you're afraid of Southampton pressing him? Last season was the game that everybody said he's not press resistant because he made a mistake. And that mistake ended up in the back of our net. We were also a much better team when he was on the pitch. He came off after 65 minutes and we couldn't hold the ball anymore. And that's when the game shifted. So that was in the back of my head. He was also our best player on the away trip to Southampton all the way at the beginning of the season. But that's that's almost 2 years ago at this point, year and a half.
Yeah, it feels like it. Yeah, definitely.
And Southampton are that high energy team. Maybe you can use McTominay and Fred I just didn't know what to expect because also Southampton have been very tired recently. So were you going to get that full press, high intensity? Did they have the ability to play it? They had some injuries. They had just played 3 days ago. I didn't know what to expect. And I sat there and I didn't criticize. I just said, I have my doubts about this. I'm not sure what to think because I did say there are pros to this. There are cons. This game could easily go in the direction that McTominay and Fred are the best choice to make for this game. And it can easily go in the direction of McTominay and Fred are the worst choice you can make. Yeah. Luckily it went, the red card changed and I thought, well, now they're going to sit back but United were able to, the reason I think that it might not have even been just a rest for Paul Pogba. I wrote about this. It hasn't been published yet, but United looked like their game plan had nothing, it looked like Pogba was a tactical omission because Solskjaer was saying, I don't need creativity from my midfield today because they ran everything through Luke Shaw.
And the wide areas in general, were very effective, weren't they?
Luke Shaw created the most shots on the team. And he played half the game. His expected assists were just under Bruno Fernandes's, and he played half the game. Yeah. You be forgiven for thinking in the second half, we're packing it in now because we took off Luke Shaw.
Yeah. Look, guys, you asked, obviously in that comment, you asked Paulie about what he'd do on Saturday against Everton. We will talk about Everton towards the end of the show. We've had a couple of other comments, so we will discuss Everton towards the end of the show, so do stick with us. But for now, Paulie, let's have a look at what's on social media. Just before we do, the other thing I would say about that team as well is, Paulie, I would have said before the game, I'd have thought Marcus Rashford maybe, you could argue, was due a rest and maybe could have been rotated. But in hindsight, that's fine.
He did just get rested. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. But, we can debate teams, can't we, until the cows come home. We always do. I mean, when United make a team, a first 11 that everyone's happy with, Paulie, I think it'll be a miracle. So, anyway, let's move on to what's on social media.
I said, hey,
Hello, and just about to welcome the show again. There, that I can welcome the thing. I'm having a nightmare today, man. I tell you, it must be the weather over. It's sending me wappy, but yeah, this is what's going on social media, Paulie, and I think we have to look at, obviously, again in relation to the Southampton game, and everybody touting all the different records. Someone said there, obviously, biggest win we've had for 26 years, which is correct, obviously, and the famous Ipswich game in 1995, Andy Cole 5 goals and all that, United being leading goal scorers. But the one that I think we should touch on, Paulie, that I find really, really interesting, especially given all the criticism that we've had over the last year or so since Bruno's come in, is that Manchester United have scored the most non-penalty goals in this Premier League season. Now, Paulie, I hope people read this and they stop calling us Penandes FC and, I don't know, Varchester United, all these ridiculous names that people want to come up with for Manchester United. Because actually, yes, we have scored the most non-penalty goals, but we're also the highest goal scorers now in the Premier League, which is interesting as well. I would, looking at it on face value, I wouldn't have thought that. But we have had a couple of high-scoring games. First of all, Paulie, what do you read into this record? The fact that we have the most non-penalty. Are you happy to sort of throw that back at everybody else, or are you reading something else into it?
Yeah, it's nice to be able to throw the they just do it with penalties.
Yeah, the agenda.
But it's a very misleading stat, and it's just it's thrown out there just to get United, to get the clicks and to get the engagement on social media and get everybody touting their own thing. It's a very false stat, because here's the thing. What do United have? They have 38 non-penalty goals this year. 13 of them have come in 2 games. That's 34.2% of your non-penalty goals have come in 2 games. If you take those out, United are scoring 1.25 non-penalty goals per game, which is 10th in the league. 10th. And that's the thing, is it reminds me a lot of it. It's good to have the most, but you got to spread them out, because it doesn't help when we could have won yesterday 1-0 and if you redistribute those 8 goals around, how many more wins do we have? So it's good to get these big blowout wins, but it reminded me a lot of Dimitar Berbatov this season. He won the Golden Boot. He scored 20 goals that year to win the Golden Boot because it was a down year in the league. 11 of those 20 goals came in 3 games.
Yeah.
So in the business end of the season, when push came to shove, when you had important games, the most important game of the season, it was
the Champions League final.
He wasn't even in the squad. And he didn't play in, he didn't play against Chelsea. I think he came on as a sub. No, he didn't play against Chelsea in the quarterfinals. He didn't play in the first leg against Schalke. He played in the second leg amongst a heavily rotated United side. Anderson was in that team. Evans and Smalling were the defenders. Paul Scholes was in that team. Paul Scholes hadn't played in, I think he had only played once in United's previous 6 league games or something like that. He wasn't playing at that point anymore. So Berbatov was only playing because it was, we've got this thing wrapped up. We won 2-0 away from home. We just have to not lose 2-0 and we'll be fine. At Old Trafford against a pretty, that season, Schalke were pretty poor. They'd made it to the semifinals, which was great, but they were overmatched.
Manuel Neuer, I think, was their goalkeeper. And I remember him having an absolute blinder at Old Trafford, actually, and it could have been a lot more than 2-0, to be fair, and it being for Neuer.
And, a week later, the following weekend was the match against Chelsea, where Chicharito scored in the first 40 seconds to effectively win us the title, and Berbatov was nowhere near there. And the reason for that was because, sure, you have a lot of goals, but it was feast or famine. On any individual match, we don't think, you're probably not going to score. And that's the thing about this United team is 1.25 goals. They have had, how many games have they had where they just haven't scored? So it's great that you lead the league, but if, you have 5 0-0s already, or 4 0-0s.
Yeah.
Or 4 0-0s plus a 1-0 loss. So redistribute those goals. And
it's
that's
incredible.
What you need more consistency.
Yeah, it's incredible to think in it, Paulie, because not only are you looking at it and thinking if a couple of those 0-0s were goals, just how much more that tally would be, but just what their points tally would be, because we're looking at the odd goal here or there to win games. Like you said, those 0-0s, Paulie, you don't have to score 2 or 3 in those. 1 goal would have been enough to win those games in hindsight. And then, all of a sudden you're taking 6 more points if you win 3 of those. And the league looks very differently now, doesn't it? And we're going from being hopeful of being in a title challenge to, well, definitely being in a title challenge if you're that far in front at this stage. So, yeah, really interesting one point. But look, the other thing is,
I remember talking about this on the interwebs last week, towards the end of the week, because I pointed out how United need to get their forwards going. They only have how many goals? This was prior to the Arsenal match. They only have how many goals between Rashford, Cavani, Martial, or it was Rashford, Greenwood, and Martial, and then Cavani chiming in with just 4 more out of your 4th striker.
Yeah.
And people were, well, look at City. Who's got their goals? City have conceded 13 goals this year. And so, United's issue hasn't, they can't defend to save their lives, seemingly. That back four of Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Maguire, and Shaw is almost impenetrable. But make any changes and the ball just flies into the net. But United haven't lost really they haven't really dropped points because of defending. The Leicester game. There's the Leicester game. And then everything else, like all their other points, City, 0-0. Chelsea, 0-0. Arsenal, they conceded the penalty, but you didn't score. There's the Tottenham game and the Crystal Palace game, but expected goals in that Crystal Palace game were way in favor of United, but also throw those first 3 games of the season out for all the reasons we have always talked about. Once they got going, all their drop points come because they just don't score. So the defense needs to improve, but you just, it's the old adage of if you don't concede a goal, you can't lose a game, but you might not win either. We see it in baseball all the time now. Pitchers don't give up runs and they still grade them on wins and losses. And it's like, that doesn't make sense because you can throw 7 innings and not give up a run and not get the win because your team didn't score.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, Paulie. I'll just bring this up. Feast of Famine, I'm stealing this. Sorry, Paulie. I think that's a new one on location. I'm not quite sure what part of the world it's from, but I've heard that quite a lot, Paulie. I think it must be a Western thing, though. It's probably a Western saying, to be fair, mate. Out us guys on the West. I just want to put this comment up, Paulie. Mason looks so much sharp. We've had a couple of comments about Mason. That's why I wanted to bring it up. He got a lot of plaudits from the game on Tuesday night. Because obviously he had an assist, but he didn't score. It was amazing. I think we scored 9, but without an actual goal from Mason. But, also the comment says, great to have Rashi and Cavani and Martial on the score. Martial definitely needed a couple of goals, hopefully, for his confidence. Hopefully we can build on that and start some scoring runs. But I just want to take the first point of that and Mason Greenwood, Paulie, because a lot of people were very impressed with him after the game on Tuesday. Did you make anything? Have you looked at Mason's performance? Do you make anything of it? Were you impressed?
I was very impressed.
Okay.
Especially not so much in the box. I was very glad to see him getting much more involved in the build-up and the creativity aspect because that's been his weak point. We know what he can do in the box, but now when he gets the ball in the box, he had where he tried to dribble between like 4 guys because as soon as he gets the ball near the box, that's what defenders do. They collapse on him. So he needs to add that. What I thought was very interesting was after we went 1-0 up, we switched Mason and Rashford. And we put Rashford on the right and Greenwood on the left. And boom, right away, Greenwood gets an assist to Rashford for a goal. Rashford then sets up the own goal. People are, everybody's debating, Rashford's not having a great season this year because we keep playing him out of position. I mean, Rashford's scoring at a higher rate than he scored last year, and he's got more goals and assists coming from the right side than from the left. I happen to think that Mason Greenwood also plays better from the left now because Yeah, he's much more deadly cutting onto his left foot to shoot, but teams have taken that away from him. And he's much more comfortable using his left foot when it's closer to the touchline, and he's a much better passer from the left. He did have an assist or he had the second assist coming from the right on that Dan James goal, which was a beautiful cross, but because he cut inside. But we've seen it countless times when he gets the ball on the right side, and it's like the Brandon Williams. He brings it on his left, and he cuts back inside, versus when he gets it on his left, when he gets it on the left side, he's able to just put his head down and go straight and run at defenders. And I think we can be a more dangerous team especially if we have to use the two of them. Like if Cavani...
Not another one of our attackers that wants to play on the left, Paulie, surely.
Yeah, but you can move Rashford to the right, because Rashford reminds me now. So thanks for not reading the article that I spent so much time writing last week, Joe. Over on Kwest Thoughts, you could subscribe and it'll go right into your inbox.
I'll go and have a look.
I wrote about this last week about Rashford and what he is. And what I settled on was he's not your lead guy. Marcus Rashford is not going to lead you to a title. What he is a very, very good number two. And the player that I really compared him to was Wayne Rooney, who you might have heard of. And Rooney's...
I think from like distant in my memory, but I got him.
From when they sold Van Nistelrooy to when Sir Alex Ferguson retired, Rooney had 2 seasons where he was just lights out and scored everything. Those were the 2 seasons that United didn't win the title in that stretch, albeit by 1 point combined. But both times Rooney got hurt at the end of the year, and United didn't have anything else because Rooney was their only guy. His 2 most productive seasons were the years that he played where he was the clear-cut Robin to somebody else's Batman.
Ronaldo, obviously Van Persie. We know.
You know, where did he play in those years? Out on the left flank, out on the right flank. They moved him into midfield with Van Persie. It was constantly out of his best position, but he still produced at higher rates in terms of goals and assists, at higher rates than his other seasons. And United were a better team for it. And where did he end up in his career? The club's all-time leading goal scorer. So if you have a career
Everton.
Everton,
United. No, I've only been facetious, mate. Carry on.
You have a career that ends up like Wayne Rooney, like that's a pretty damn good career, even if you're not going to be the guy that leads you to it. And that's what United need from Rashford. They need him to be this all-around player that he can be. But this year, his passing is down. His creativity is very down. But it comes back alive from the right-hand side. It reminds me a lot of Nani at the beginning of the decade. Nani, I couldn't stand Nani.
There's a player that everybody wants to be compared to.
I could not stand left wing Nani, because left wing Nani got the ball, put his head down, cut inside onto the right to try to hit the top corner from 25 yards out every time. And then he could do a somersault. On the right, he looked like a player that was playing within the team. And it's not a coincidence that his best seasons came when Valencia got injured and Nani had to play a lot more on the right-hand side, because he would look, what am I looking for? Am I looking for a pass, a cross, a shot? What should I do here? Versus the left side was every time it was the same thing. And Rashford this year, his passes into the box are down. His creativity's down. But nobody has carried the ball into the box more than Marcus Rashford, other than Jack Grealish. And you could see it when he gets the ball on the left side. Tunnel vision. I'm just going to run at these defenders. I'm going to run at them, and it doesn't work, and it's hurting the team. So on the right, he becomes this passer and a shooter and a finisher and everything you want out of him. If he brings that to the left side, and from the left side, all of his goals have been, I ran behind the defense and somebody played me in.
No, Paulie, I think that's absolutely spot on. This Wayne Rooney fellow you're on about, I think he used to run around a lot, scored a few goals, didn't he? And used to leave his position quite a lot. He used to wind me up a lot. But no, all seriousness, no. Wayne Rooney, fantastic player.
We want to talk about a guy who leaves his position a lot.
Yeah.
He came on at halftime.
We've got other things to discuss, Paulie. And one thing I do want to discuss, because I realised it's come up on my timeline a lot, and I know it probably wasn't in the show structure, but we have to talk about it, Paulie, because especially in the nature of our game and even some of the other games this midweek, the VAR I'm interested to see, just before we went on air, breaking news is that Bednarek's red card's been overturned, which I'm really, really happy about, because for me it wasn't a penalty, and it probably wasn't it definitely wasn't a red card. But look, it's really interesting, isn't it, boy? We don't use this show to sort of talk about refereeing decisions, but that one, and I don't know if you've had opportunity to see David Luiz's yet, which incidentally hasn't been overturned. Very similar situation, but that one hasn't been overturned. I just found it, even though I'm a Man United fan and it helped to score a couple of more goals, I wasn't comfortable with that. Were you, Paulie?
Yeah, it kind of really ruined the game for me. As much as like the whole game, I watched being like, good, this is what we should be doing. I like what I'm seeing in terms of not so much as like rah fan. Look, I posted a poll on my personal Twitter this morning, talking about which game did you enjoy more, the Leeds match or the Southampton match, and the results went the way that I would have said. I enjoyed the hell out of that Leeds match. All 6 goals, I was going nuts that we scored them. This one, it was just after 2-0, I was like, good, this is what we should be doing, professional. But that red card kind of just ruined it even more for me. And you know, the fact that United scored 2 goals in 7 minutes afterwards, and we're complaining that they didn't get enough injury time because they could have scored a 10th, which they probably could have. Like, what do you expect, Jan?
That's like saying if you'd have had 10 minutes at a time, you'd have scored 11, Paulie. It's like it could have gone on and on.
When I first saw it and they blew the whistle, I was like, how are they going to even give a penalty for this? You could see Martial went full Superman. Like, even if you get fouled, if you have the ability to go full Superman, like you have that much control of your body, like it shouldn't be a penalty. Like that means you're trying too hard.
And I think that's why Bednarek's red card got overturned, Paul, because they've looked at it and thought it shouldn't have even been a penalty. The David Luiz one, I think
that's the thing.
David Luiz can be a penalty, and therefore it hasn't been overturned. But I think they've looked at that and thought, well, this shouldn't have been a penalty in the first, and that's probably why they've overturned. Whether that's right or wrong, I think subconsciously that's what they've done.
I still haven't seen the David Luiz one, so I can't speak on that. But the Bednarek one, I thought at the time, like when Mike Dean went over to look at the monitor, and I'm pretty sure I read an article about this in like October. So this is 2 months into the season. And at that point, they said every time the referee has gone to the monitor, except for once, he has overturned his decision. And I haven't seen a time since then where a referee has gone to the monitor and not overturned the decision. So it might still be one time. So as soon as Mike Dean went over to the monitor, I was like, good, they're going to overturn this. It's not going to be good. When he came back and showed a red, I was like, what Jan Bednarek was doing? Didn't play the ball. He made no effort to play the ball. And he did that because he was making every effort to not make any contact. What else are you supposed to do there?
A lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people make a lot of the fact, Paulie, that, referees, when they go to the screen, they never overturn the decision. They always overturn the decision. But I think Mike Dean is one of those that if there's ever going to be a referee that's going to look at something and stick to what he originally said, it's Mike Dean, isn't it? You know what I mean? I mean, he is very stubborn referee.
I'm glad they overturned it because very easy to pack it up. All right, 9-0, forget about it. It's one game. I don't think goal difference is going to come into play for Southampton. If it does, that's bad, but don't lose 9-0. But for the most part, I don't think it will. So what's the difference between, if you take goal difference out, what's the difference between 9-0 and 1-0? Nothing. It's a game. You lost it. Forget about it. The only thing that carried over was that Bednarek was ineligible to play for 3 games now, and that's a big loss. So I'm glad that
he's all right. He's all right. He's had it rescinded, Paulie, so that's all good. But what is interesting, Paulie, and we're going to move on to the poll question next that you've put out there for everyone. What I do want to say is I'd be interested to know the last manager to get 9 twice, like Ralph Hasenhüttl has now. But that's a good point that you make about the difference between conceding 9 and 1-0, because let's remember, after they conceded the 9 against Leicester, Southampton then became one of the most informed teams in the Premier League over a substantial amount of time. They really turned it around after that result. So they'll be hoping that they can have a similar reaction.
From the 9-0 afterwards, I think it was them and United were the 2 best teams.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll want to have...
Then them and United, I think, were the 2 best teams, or maybe Liverpool were in there as well. But they were both very much in the top 4.
Yeah, and the only problem with it this time is I think they've probably got more injuries at the moment than when they lost 9 before. So recovering from this one might not be as easy.
It's a stigma thing. No one's going to sit here and say Ralph Hasenhüttl isn't a good coach and he isn't the best coach for Southampton right now.
No.
If you're going to make a decision because he's lost 2 games 9-0, until you lose something on goal difference, that's just the dumbest decision ever. Like, you can lose a game 9-0 every single season, and I wouldn't care if he is making my team better. If one of our losses is 9-0, get over it. Like, unless we lose on goal difference, something my opinion on that will change when we finish outside of the European places because of goal difference.
Yeah, I think it's telling, Paulie, that actually I haven't seen a lot of stuff criticising Ralph Hasenhüttl personally as a manager or as a coach for that result. So I think that says a lot about how much people do rate him as a manager and know it's probably just one of those freak results. But like I say, Paulie, let's have a look at this week's poll results. I love these little things, Paulie, but for some reason
they keep playing the wrong one.
They never work properly for me. But anyway, poll result point. You put this out yesterday. We have had a fair amount of votes on it, so I'm glad to see that. And I think for once, Paulie, I seem to have agreed with the general consensus, which is great for me. I usually they're not wrong because it's opinion, but I would be going for Luke Shaw all day long. I've been so impressed with Luke Shaw this season. And the other reason I would go for Luke Shaw is because I feel for Luke Shaw to play this well, he has got a lot of things to overcome, Paulie, and that's why I always like to see this player play well. I think he's had a fair share of criticism, both from within the club and the managers that he's worked under at times. He's had criticism from media, so I think psychologically it takes a lot for this player to sort of blank it out and perform at a high level. And also, let's not forget the injuries that he has gone through and he continues to go through. So it's very difficult for him to keep his body conditioned. And I think he's one of those players at the moment, Paulie, that are thriving from having no fans in the stadium. I really do, because I do find that he's quite maybe fragile, maybe is the wrong word, but he's quite sensitive to criticism.
I'm glad of the results in this poll because Luke Shaw's finally getting his due. I know that and
I think he is clearly the best player this season, by the way.
And Red Devils talk, there was always the joke about me, Luke Shaw's my son. It was always just because I was like, Luke, I came into the season being like, Luke Shaw's bang on average, but like he's not. But people were saying, left back's like a huge problem. And I was like, no, backup left back's a problem. If we have to spend a lot of money, it needs to go elsewhere. If you need you should only be devoting a little bit of money to improving your backup left back, which is what we ultimately did. It wasn't like a top 4 problem. I think Luke Shaw gets a really bad rap and a really harsh rap because of a lot of things. Look, he moved to United at 19. You're very immature at 19. He moved away from home with a massive price tag over his head that weighed heavily on him. And he wasn't, he's immature because he's 19 years old. There's the story, and it took him a while to settle in. And that happens with players. And then the following year, he was great. And then a month in, shatters his leg. And by the time he comes back, now he's got a new manager who doesn't really love young guys, especially young, unproven guys. And that's exactly what Shaw was. He had one good year at that point. And I don't want to take the time to develop you, especially when you're coming off a leg break that we don't know if you're ever going to get back from. And there's the story of why was he late to training? And he was like, well, my mom forgot to wake me up. And it's like, all right, like you got to grow up. But again, you're 21, 22. Like, yeah, that's a little bit, you got to take some responsibility, which he now has done. He's a father now. He's 25. You're much more mature at 25 than you are at 22. And I think he suffered from all the things Mourinho said, because all the things Mourinho said about him, that stuck in the fans' mind. And it's stuck in the fans' mind, so that even when he played well, it was, oh no, Shaw, I have to do his thinking for him, etc. Because then Luke Shaw was actually good before Mourinho got sacked. He was good. Remember, Ashley Young was fantastic the year before, got into the England squad. And then
he was playing with Mourinho's brain, apparently, Paulie.
He got into the England squad for the World Cup. And when he comes back, Luke Shaw's your first choice left back all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And he stayed there. And then when Ollie came in, he got better again. And then last year, he got hurt right away. He got hurt in the third game of the season. By the time he came back in December, Brandon Williams was knocking on the door, and people wanted to see him because, we were just over Shaw, but everybody was hating on Luke Shaw. And I'm like, he's not this bad. And this year he has really, really stood up for himself and stood out. And I'm glad he's finally getting his due from the fan base, because he has been this good. And when Ollie took him, I can't tell you how many people came at me on Twitter when Ollie took him off when Ollie took off Alex Telles against Everton in the League Cup. And they were like, why is he doing that? This guy's nuts. Telles is a penalty taker. Why is he? And I was like, because Luke Shaw's a more attacking player than Alex Telles. Exactly. He's better for United's build-up. He's trying to win this game. He's trying to win this game in the next 9 minutes. And when you're down against Sheffield United, that's why he took off Luke Shaw. Or when you had after 45 minutes against Leipzig, why did he take off Alex Telles, knowing he was only going to get another 15 minutes out of Shaw? And it was like, because Shaw gives you more than
you just come back from an injury as well, right. Shaw, at that stage, And to be fair, Paulie, you're absolutely spot on, because if you've got any doubts about how much Ollie thinks about Luke Shaw at the moment, look at that, what you said when he brought him on late in the Everton game. Look at that Leipzig game. Look at Tuesday night's game, Paulie. The fact that he took Shaw off at half-time, one tells you that he needs him, but he sees him as one of the key players. But also, he didn't replace him with Telles. He replaced him with Fred moving to left back. So that told you all you need to know.
And remember, after the Crystal Palace match, Shaw's the one that got behind the microphone on the pitch and said, we need more players. This is not good enough. We need guys in here to push the squad. And everybody laughed and said, dude, the player that we're going to get is in your position. And when we were bringing in Alex Telles, I was sitting here telling everybody, don't expect him to walk into the 11. He could boom in a good cross, but everything else, Shaw's better at him. And Shaw's taken the crossing and improved immensely on it. And you could see that the squad competition is very good, but also his mentality was, Alex Telles is here, and I can learn from Alex Telles, but also I have to be better than Alex Telles and play better. And you can juxtapose that with someone like Anthony Martial, who I love and I think he's a great player, but when we bring in big strikers, it seems to unsettle Martial.
Yeah. I just think, Paulie, that's why I give these players probably a bit more credit when they do play well, because like I said at the top there, I think they have to overcome more. I mean, you look at certain players in the world of football, like I will look at two examples, Cristiano Ronaldo, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Criticism is just like water off a duck's back for those guys, and you don't feel like they have an issue overcoming what people say. Whereas I do think it has affected Luke, and I think it affects people like Anthony Martial, and there's probably other players that we could look at. So I think when they do play well, it's nice to see them doing it, Paul, because you feel that they have more to overcome than some other players, if you know what I'm saying.
For sure. And it's funny because I think Luke Shaw has a better claim for United's Player of the Year this year than he did the year he actually won it. It's just that he's not going to get it because Bruno Fernandes exists. And if he does win it, it's because Bruno Fernandes has done nothing from now until the end of the season. And that's a problem. If Bruno Fernandes is merely good and not the God level that he was at in the first half of the season, he takes this award. He takes this award easily.
Yeah, cool. Right, Paulie, let's move on now and let's just have a quick look at Everton. We've had some people asking questions about Everton. First of all, we'll go to the question that came in with another question that I asked you, Paulie, but we said we'd leave it till the end. what do you? We'll bring this. Well, we'll do this one first, Paulie. Just playing devil's advocate. Not that I don't endorse the view, which I think this was an earlier comment when he was talking about Pogba being rotated and the need for maybe Bruno could have maybe had some time off. Shouldn't we also be thinking about conserving energy this season more? Obviously, I know you've got something to say on this, Paulie, so go for it.
I mean, for sure. We absolutely should be conserving energy, but we parked ourselves in the Southampton half of the pitch. We didn't have to do a lot of running. Yeah, I wish Bruno Fernandes got 45 minutes of rest, but it was a statement of intent from Ollie. And think about this. In January is probably the most brutal part of your schedule. Everybody says the festive period, but the festive period tires you out. What January does is piles it on. So you get tired, and then you don't get a rest chance, especially if you are in the semifinals of the League Cup, or if in a regular season, semifinals of the League Cup adds 2 games in January. If you screw up your first FA Cup game like last year and you have to get a replay, you get no rest. So this year was League Cup semifinal. All right, then we got to rest against Watford. But then it's midweek Premier League game, midweek Premier League game. Then Liverpool. So we can't even get a rest in the FA Cup. Midweek Premier League game. And
the thing is, though, Paul, February, this month of February, they only has 28 days. United have got 8 games.
They do. But they also get the Europa League, which is a nice reprieve because you get 2 games where you just have to score more goals than the other team over 2 games. You don't need to win both of them. You could win 1-0 over 2 games. And you get to use players like Dan James, and Amad Diallo is going to come into the team. You could play Brandon Williams and Alex Tellez. And suddenly you're not asking Luke Shaw and Bruno Fernandes to play 90 minutes twice a week. You're asking them, you probably would rest. I mean, go to Real Sociedad and name a completely changed 11 and just try to hang on for a 0-0 or a 1-1 or even a 1-0 loss. And then when you come to Old Trafford, depending on it, then you'll see how much, I would think Pogba will play in the Europa League games because he's being rested in Premier League games. And if you win 1-0, that's all you need to do. Or 1-0, 1-1, maybe Bruno Fernandes only has to play 30 minutes of those games. So it'll give you a better chance to rotate your squad and ease the demands of the squad that Manchester City or Liverpool aren't going to have because they need to be on it twice a week for the Champions League.
NZZ said here, how do you see him approach? I mean, when you say he'll rotate, we know he'll rotate, Paulie, but heavily. Do you expect to see kids even for some of these games, Paulie? Some of the not that heavily rotate.
Diallo will play. Diallo will play. Yeah. That was obvious. Remember Solskjaer a month ago, or just under a month before the Europa League tie was set to be played, he said Diallo will make his debut within a month. And I was like, let's read between the lines there. He'll probably come on in the Europa League because it's also a good way to bring him on for the physicality of it. I know he scored 2 goals at the weekend. My biggest takeaway of that was I flipped on that match and I was like, I know United's U23s are made up of primarily 16, 17, 18-year-olds, but Diallo looked like the youngest one. He's just tiny. There's going to be a breeding in process or a betting in process. I think the Europa League is the best place to do that until he goes, no, I'm undroppable. And maybe he does do that.
European football tends to give you a bit more space and is a little less physical as well. I had to leave this one up here, Paulie, because we always claim that this is your burner account, mate, which we know it isn't. But I'd love to see Jonesy tearing it up in the Europa League. I mean, does this burner account share your opinions on that one,
no,
Paulie?
Jones isn't going to play.
Are you worried about seeing Phil Jones in the Europa League?
I'm not. Well, I'm not worried about it. I wouldn't mind it. Look, Phil Jones played in the Europa. Okay. Phil Jones played in the Europa League last year and kept a clean sheet.
And Tramier. He scored.
Right. I said maybe we'll see like a Bailly, because what Solskjaer definitely wants that we could see now is he wants to play Lindelof once a week because he's got the back issue, and that's why Tuanzebe started against Sheffield, which I think he's going to try to avoid going forward. But I said, don't be shocked if we see a Tuanzebe Bailly partnership, but don't hold your breath on that. Just so Maguire can get a break, but don't hold your breath.
I find this always interesting, Paulie, that when the Champions League draw comes out, it must wind you wafer up so much because I think nowadays United fans and other fans who are in the Champions League, They more worry about the games that they've got after their Champions League games than the fixtures that they have actually in the Champions League. I always find it quite amazing. And I don't know the dates of all the rounds in the Europa League if we go far in it, where we'll be after saying, well, we're interested there after Sociedad's second leg. We've got a massive game away to Chelsea. So I think that'll obviously come into the factor when it comes to picking teams. The other thing I want to ask you, Paulie, about Everton now at the weekend quickly. People have want some of your thoughts about maybe the double pivot that you'd like to see for that game. I think we can almost guarantee Paul Pogba will come back into the team, but will he come back into the team on the left? Will he play in double pivot? What would you like to see, Paulie?
I wouldn't like to see him play on the left or the right. I think we're not as good as people think we are there. We don't score goals from that. Yeah. The last time we scored in that situation, was against Aston Villa. We scored 1 goal from open play. The other one was a penalty. We struggle with that mightily, and Pogba defensively is not nearly as bad as people make him out to be. So I think he comes back into the team. You can make the argument to keep him out. I just wouldn't. You could look at the League Cup game that we played, Pogba Matic. We played really well. You could look at the league game that we played against Everton. McTominay, Fred, we played really well. Everybody says, we dominated that League Cup game. I am of the belief that we played better in the league, which would be, hey, go McTominay, Fred. So I don't know if I'd go Pogba Matic because, Everton will come at you enough that I think it would work, but I wouldn't. Pogba Matic, Pogba Fred, Pogba McTominay, doesn't matter to me. I just think Pogba will be in there.
Was McFred the double pivot in the Leeds 6-2 game, Paulie?
Yes.
I know McTominay. Yeah, that's 15 goals now in Old Trafford for the McFred double pivot. That people say it's our most defensive one, but
the issue is what happens in the other games, because if you take those games out, they average less than a goal a game when they play, and that's not just this season. That goes back to last season too.
Yeah, no, mate, I'm only playing that. It wasn't, after 2 minutes, it wasn't really a McFred double pivot anyway against Southampton. Obviously, McTominay moved and played more as an 8, maybe a second 10 with Bruno. So it was just a Fred pivot on Tuesday night.
I thought in the second half was interesting because the second half we looked like the United post-lockdown team where we were playing that 3-2-5. Except Van de Beek kept bombing forward and basically standing on top of Martial, which took him completely out of the game and made it. And McTominay was like dropping deep, which would make it a 3-7 formation. And we struggled to break it down. We struggled to break them down. It took a moment of magic from Bruno and a fantastic ball from a fantastic goal from outside of the box from McTominay. Yeah. But then at times it was like a 2-1-7. And McTominay was the guy spraying passes around. And it's like, this is weird because one, like, this would be the perfect role for Van de Beek. Two, Van de Beek's thing is he's really good at finding space and receiving passes. That's only good if you have somebody that could pass you the ball. McTominay's not that guy. You want to give all this space in the midfield for someone to spray passes around. McTominay's the last midfielder on your team that you want doing that. But I give him credit because he didn't take the safe passes. He tried to be incisive with it. And it didn't come off. But you're not going to get better if you don't try this stuff. And when it finally did come off, was his goal. He made a beautiful pass to Greenwood. The ball came back out, and he was rewarded with a goal. The shot was nice. I think the pass to Greenwood was even nicer. So it was interesting.
My frustration with Van de Beek, and we're not going to talk about this because we're going to wrap up now, but I just want to say my frustration with Van de Beek at the moment is whenever he gets an opportunity on the pitch to get minutes, it seems as if he comes on the pitch trying to show Ollie what his game is all about, rather than trying to show Ollie that he can play the game that Ollie wants him to play. That's what we need. He needs to show Ollie that he can be the player he needs.
And outside of possession, he was right next to McTominay where he needed to be. And then as soon as we got the ball and passed it, he just went right up to the forward line to the point that you were like, this has to be a tactical, and like the coaches had to have told them to do this. You can't do this every single time and not have the coaches being yelling at you. So you wonder, why is he doing this? Like, why is he the only one that does this? Because I can think of another midfielder who would be really good at that. And how come he doesn't get any criticism? Because I could think of other midfielders that the second that they take 2 steps out of position, it's, oh, he's not defensively aware enough.
We know the players, No, absolutely spot on, Paulie. Some other comments quickly just about Lingard. I'm really happy for him. Did a couple of debut goals yesterday. I think that's a great move for United. Look, this loan, he either comes back to United full of confidence and a better player, or
he's got no
United,
let's call a spade a spade. He's got no future at United. The loan is
so he puts some value on his some value on his transfer fee. Of course he does. That's what I mean. It's a great move for United and for Lingard. That's all we've got time for today. Paulie, thanks ever so much for joining me for this wonderful chat that we have twice a week, mate. Really enjoyed it. Well, it was only once a week this week, but it will be twice a week. We should be back with you next Tuesday, pending no more snowstorms for either Paulie or for me. We should be all good. Thank you to everyone in the comments. If you've enjoyed the video today, do smash a like on it. Do subscribe to Kwest Thoughts. We obviously have the Kwest Thoughts on Twitter, which is Paulie put some great articles in there. We've got the YouTube channel that we do this through. So do subscribe and look out for the content that we've got coming at you. Thank you for all your interaction. It's been great to hear from you all. And we'll see you next Tuesday for the next United